We talk today about Bethlehem, the city of peace that lives no real peace. Because any city that is walled, it means no peace is availing. And that is a real challenge, not only for Bethlehem, but for the Christian and the meaning of the Christian message. But if I'm going to talk about the challenges of living inside the wall, as you know, our northern borders is Jerusalem. And so Bethlehem and Jerusalem are a vicinity, whether in the spiritual dimension, they are a twinning on a spiritual dimension or territory. Now the wall separates between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, and thus separates between job opportunities, spiritual dimensions, economic dimensions, and that creates serious problems. In Bethlehem today, we live abnormal living situation, but my concern is that the world is considering our abnormal living situation as if it is normal. No, a nation who lives inside the wall, this is purely, significantly abnormal living conditions.
We were 98% as Christians in Bethlehem. 98%, imagine. Today, we are less than 20%. 40,000 inhabitants in Bethlehem, majority of Muslims, and as Christians, we are less than 12,000. And I've been saying less than 12,000 for the last few years, but the number has gone down since then because immigration.
The occupation makes it so difficult for you to live here that if you have an opportunity to leave, people want to leave.
The reason is the political situation.
Politics has become a part of our daily life. Every aspect of our life is related to politics, and you cannot really ever isolate any part of your life from it.
It's quiet one day, or 1 month, or 1 year, and then again there's a conflict.
In Bethlehem, as you have seen, we live a very strangulated city. We live a walled city. We live a gated city. And that affects the quality of life.
And so with the political situation comes the economic situation, especially in Bethlehem, as Christians depend on tourism. And when there is a political situation, a bad political situation, the tourists don't come.
1 out of 3 young Palestinians, if they have the chance to immigrate, they will do. And this is true for Muslims as well as of Christians because of the situation.
And that's the problem, because all of the people that have the opportunity to leave are the only hope of creating more change here.
I choose to live here because I believe there is purpose, there is intention, and there is a real desire that peace needs to happen in this land. That being an American is something I honor and fully respect and appreciate, but also I am a Palestinian, and I am a Palestinian who has deep roots and historic roots in this land, who wants to see this land also free from violence, to see the same values that I cherish in the US, the values of democracy and equality and justice that we're still struggling with in the US, but continue to aspire for, and the freedoms that exist there, to see them also manifested in this land as well.
So now I chose to come back and live here. I went and traveled a lot, and then I said, no, I need to come back here. I need to give back to my community. I need to try to make a difference here. But it gets very frustrating, so it's doable if you take vacations.
We have stories to share it, not to do anything more than to inspire other people, because we have a strong faith, and that's what helps us to stay alive.
When you ask people in the US, what do you think of Palestinians, the first word that comes out is terrorist and violent, and this is an affiliation that people make there through their media.
When I heard some very negative point of view concerning the Palestinians, I become upset. And when I also hear about negative aspect about America, I also get upset. Okay, I would like things to work out so I can love my country, my Palestine, but at the same time I love my country, my adopted country, the United States.
Being an American here does not give me at all any rights or any privilege. I cannot use my US passport, for example, to go to Jerusalem. I cannot use my US passport to fly from Ben Gurion Airport. What they have done, what the Israeli government has done, which actually violates State Department law and international law is that in my U.S. passport, which is an official government document, I don't even own it, it's an official document, they have put a stamp in it that has my name in Hebrew and my Palestinian ID number. In a sense, they have transformed my U.S. passport to become a ID card that if any soldier stops me with my U.S. passport and sees it, immediately knows that I am a Palestinian as well. And this is something that, you know, as Americans we've tried to address here, the American government has tried to address here, and they couldn't get anywhere with the Israeli government to do something about it.
Concerning the Christian Arabs, Palestinians, you have professors, you have businessmen, every facet in society, they are involved in it. They are in banks, they are very active in the Palestinian community. And the problem now is that the unemployment rate is very high. We have a lot of very highly educated society here, the Palestinians, but we don't have a job for them.
So we were owning 3 big businesses here. One of them is souvenir shop with a home collection and gifts. The other one is selling organic fruits and vegetables, grocery. And the third one was the biggest business is to sell new spare parts for cars and fixing cars as a car mechanics. To Jerusalem and Bethlehem, this used to be the entrance, the main entrance, and the most vivid street for business. It was the best area. If you can ask anyone in the street, in the city, and ask about Rashid Stone Street, how was it before? They would tell you we were jealous to have 1 meter square just to have a business there. But since 1996, the Israeli military decided to set up a military camp. Hidden this camp behind my building, they became controlling on all the high buildings and use it as a base to shoot as well. And they were crowded here in front of the house and the entrance of the house, so we couldn't have any clients there to come to the entrance of the street. So people obliged to close their businesses and have left. Especially this area is to be for Christians, most of them.
There are more than 50 hotels in the Bethlehem area. So, and owned by Christian families and the souvenir shops and all these families that work from their home for tourism. So, and guides, of course, don't forget us. So when tourism is affected, they don't come, so we don't work. And so many families leave because of that.
When they dig to build the wall, they couldn't build it in front of the tree. They obliged to move it as it is right now just because of the main sewage pipes underground. So we could have an entrance and reopen. So I promised God, who saved our life in miracles, to share our stories in order to inspire other people how it is so important to have strong faith. Because nothing is impossible to God. God can do it.
From this place is where midnight mass is broadcasted to your country. It's not from the Nativity Church, it is from St. Catherine Church. But when you see on TV, they tell you it's a Nativity Church because of course it's right here, you know, it's in the same place, but it's called St. Catherine Church. And because Orthodox that run the other church, celebrate Christmas on the 6th of January. And Armenians, who have also a place in the Nativity Church, celebrate Christmas on the 18th of January. So imagine Bethlehem having 3 times Christmas. It's fun. It's the longest vacation for kids in school. Of course, kids love it, but as parents, we don't. It's a long, very long, about more than 20 days vacation from school.
Most of the Christian holidays, the Israelis issue permits for Christians to be able to enter into Israel, and it's not the same for every Muslim holiday. And many times it's conceived that this is because Israelis try to create tension internally between Christians and Muslims who are Palestinian, but I don't think that that has been a case now. I mean, there's some kind of cultural instances where intermarriage has not really been so accepted, but you find that this is changing with time, and nothing that the Israelis have tried to instigate between Palestinian Christians and Muslims has been successful, because in the end we are all Palestinians and we're all in the same boat, and we are all kind of struggling against this larger oppression, which is the occupation.
After 1967, as Palestinians, we had to now, living under occupation, we had to register in what ironically called the civil administration, which is nothing civil about it, which was the military apparatus the Israeli military apparatus that controlled us as Palestinians. And one of the mechanisms that the Israeli military has always done to create a sense of division between the Palestinians, so it's one of those like divide and conquer mindset, was actually on our IDs, the IDs that we carried that were issued by the Israeli military, they put our religious affiliation on them.
But it says here religion, and then it says the religion in Hebrew.
So if I went to a checkpoint and I showed them an ID and I was a Christian, they would know. Now, most of the time they didn't do anything, but if there were a few Muslims standing there at the checkpoint and they saw me as a Christian there, and for some reason I got a little bit of a privilege over them, you could imagine the ripple effects of what that would have on me and them as Muslims that are stuck at the checkpoint, and me as a Christian who passes just because, not respecting me for my faith, but doing it to create tension.
Divide and rule. I mean, this is a Muslim, this is a Christian. Let's this time give the Christian more privileges and stuff like that.
And this has always been part of the policy of the Israeli military and occupation, to create divide and conquer and to create tension always between the communities themselves. Sadly, after the Palestinian Authority came and took over that civil part of the, what the Israeli military had, for some reason they automatically maintained the writing of the religion on the ID cards. Now, of course, it doesn't affect us at all as Palestinians, because there is no tension and there is no conflict between Palestinian Christians and Muslims. And we're very happy to say that recently the Palestinian Authority decided to take that out. Because the only people that actually look at IDs are still soldiers at checkpoint. I don't need to show my ID here. If I get stopped, I show my driver's license. My ID is mostly used to cross borders. And so for the Palestinian Authority to wake up and to say, we're going to stop the discrimination at the borders where soldiers begin to prefer one over the other because of their religion. And so I think this was a good move that happened, where now when we go to checkpoints, I show them my ID. Of course, if they look into the computer, they could still find out what my religious affiliation is, but it's not immediately just by showing them my ID that they could tell I'm a Christian and a Muslim, and they could use that to bring division between us.
In 2002, there were a curfew and siege in the whole city, in the Bethlehem city.
When I was a junior in high school, there was the major Israeli incursion in Ramallah, and we were under curfew in our homes for about 3 months or so. We couldn't go to school, and the first 2 weeks there was no lifting of the curfew.
They caged us at home, starving 40 days with the area here. And without even, we couldn't bring medicines for the old sick mother.
And then they lifted it one day for 2 hours, and they expected everyone to leave their homes and buy all their groceries, all their medicine, all the things that they need from town, and return to their homes within 2 hours without using their cars.
At this point where we live, it was the most dangerous point for the crossfire in the city.
And we were walking through tanks, and the tanks are occupied by 17-year-old Israeli soldiers who are whistling and flirting with you and talking to you like hey, what's up, and you're like, are you serious? You're in my country, occupying my city, and you're trying to make nice talk with me? Like, get away from me. But you can't really say anything because they're standing in a tank.
just before the first uprising in 1986. We have been about 85 to 90% Christians in the city of Bethlehem. And now we became 50% till 10% in Bethlehem city. Is it only because of the radicals here and there, or it is from the conflict and the war and the curfew?
I always like to stress that it wasn't God who promised the state of Israel the land. It was Lord Balfour, not the Lord God, but Lord Balfour who promised Israel the land back in 1917. And I think many people mix biblical Israel with today's state of Israel. And these are two different categories that one should not actually connect.
The Israelis wanted to be a Jewish state. And the Palestinians said they will never recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Why? Because they have already recognized Israel in 1993, the Oslo Accord, you know.
My people are hoping that this agreement, which we are signing today, marks the beginning of the end of a chapter of pain and suffering which has lasted throughout this century. My people are hoping that this agreement, which we are signing today, will usher in an age of peace, coexistence, and equal rights.
But Israel insists on a Jewish state, and the Arabs who live within Israel are also against the idea of making it a Jewish state. They want it to be a democratic state, Israeli democratic state for all its citizens, okay?
Imagine that you have a pizza pie, and the pizza pie is divided into 10 slices. And there are two people fighting over this pizza pie, and both people claim that the whole pizza pie is theirs. And both people have legitimate arguments to say that this whole thing is ours. But because of the fighting, for so many years, they decide to divide the pizza pie between them. Now, one group is actually stronger than the other. And they say, well, because we're the stronger, we're going to take 8 slices, and we're going to give the other group 2 slices. This is what the Oslo peace process was about. The people who get the 2 slices, or who were promised the 2 slices, are so weak and so hungry that they say, I'll take the 2 slices. Just, you could take the 8, I recognize your right to the 8, just give me the 2 slices, and I'm fine. Well, the person who took the 8 slices, and already has them now in his fridge, saying, I'm going to give you the 2 slices, but I'm going to give you the 2 slices incrementally, over time. Fine, give me the 2 slices over time, just give me the 2 slices. The challenge we have, and this is what the settlements issue is that as the person was giving us the 2 slices, they were nibbling off from the 2 slices themselves and eating them up.
So we're now in Kremizan Valley, and it's actually known as the last green area within the governorate of Bethlehem that hosts around 200,000 people. Kremizan Valley also hosts the last winery and the last seminary for Christians in the city, and upon the Israeli plan to build the separation wall, the segregation wall actually, this area is completely designated to be disconnected from the Palestinian side, or let's say from the community that it serves, from Bethlehem community. And it's upon the route of the wall, it will be separated to the western side of the wall. That means that we will not have access again to it as a green area, which is again the last green area in Bethlehem. And from a psychological perspective, that's very much needed if you want to maintain a healthy community, or if you want to even grow a healthy community. People, if they lose their attachment or connection to nature, they lose their humanity somehow.
And this is the challenge with the settlements. It's not just a fact that there are buildings that are present. It is the idea and the concept of confiscating land, taking over land, building networks of road that only connects the settlements to each other, which only means Israeli Jews can travel on them, we as Palestinians cannot, taking the resources of this land and presenting a continuous presence of hegemony and power over those who are not part of that group of people. This is what the settlements is in its core. It is an expression of the discrimination that we as Palestinians continue to face from the overall occupation itself, but it is the most present in our face expression of this occupation.
The settlers came from all over the world. If you were living in your home in, I don't know, Estonia or Russia or whatever, and someone says to you, why don't you come to this area, to Israel, and you can get a home, you can get startup money, you can get a job, you can have your kids put in school for free, you know, of course they're going to say yes.
All the settlements around Bethlehem are almost connected and creating a circle that enclaves Bethlehem. Unfortunately, that's the reality that exists right now, but this is also a reality that challenges the old identity, the original identity of Bethlehem and Jerusalem, for example, where they were never separated as cities.
Jerusalem has always been a city that has been conquered. And the challenge is that every time it's conquered by any nation or any group of people, any religion, immediately there is discrimination and there is undermining and there is marginalizing of the people that are not part of that group.
For me, as a West Banker, I cannot go to Jerusalem. If you just drive from Ramallah to Jerusalem, it would literally take you 10 to 15 minutes. But because of the Israeli occupation, if I do have a permit to allow me to enter into Jerusalem, then it's going to take me at least 40 minutes, 45 minutes if there is no traffic at the checkpoint.
If we pass the checkpoint and go anywhere, we cannot drive there. We have to walk.
As a Palestinian, if I do have a permit to cross into Israel, then I can only cross through Kalandia checkpoint. Not only that, but I have to go through the pedestrian walking entry into the checkpoint, and I cannot cross through by car.
We are still not be able to pass the Israelis checkpoint without a permit because we cannot get it. I wasn't lucky to get it this year for this Christmas.
There are these Christian Zionists who still actually use the Bible as a tool for injustice, and I believe that the Bible actually is a tool for justice, and it was a book written under occupation as a sign to look for God who helped people out of captivity into the freedom. And I think this is the main message of the Bible. It's not to oppress people, it's to liberate people.
So I designed this nativity with a removable wall. This is my design idea, and I opened the door here for the light where Jesus laid. Because the wall has to be removed from the Holy Land. That's my belief. So I designed it, and with a watchtower as well. Because the wall will be removed one day, because this is a Holy Land. It has to be the example for peace and light, because this is where peace and light started.
I would like to see my grandchildren, and I like to see everybody's grandchildren to live in a peaceful setting. I think a peaceful setting, a permanent peaceful setting, a just and lasting peace will encourage people to stay on the land.
So for the Jews to control Jerusalem automatically means denying of rights for the Christians and the Muslims, even for the best of intentions for that. And if the Muslims do the same thing will happen. And so Jerusalem needs to be a respected city, a holy city for the three religions, and needs to be honored in that. And the three religions need to play an equal role in determining the presence and the future of that city.
Palestinians need to get the recognition of pain, and Israelis need to get assurance of security, and that can only happen if both sides come to mature over the national identities and religious identities they have, and see that actually they can coexist as identities together and they don't need to conflict, because this was the reality to some extent before 1948. And therefore, that time when we have people who are together in oneness, at that point we can have peace, basically.
In the mere end, we are part and parcel of humanity, and that's why when I say, as long as the Palestinian-Israeli conflict does not stand on a justified solution, that brings goodness, that brings mercy, that brings justice to all of us, Palestinians and Israeli, we fail.